So welcome. Thank you so much for jumping on. I'm really excited about, this is the first of our real conversations actually with Dr. Melanie Milne, who is a beautiful Chinese doctor that I met recently. And we got chatting about menopause and the Chinese approach to menopause. And I actually really loved hearing Melanie explain it. So I thought it would be great really today just to have an opportunity to take a look from a different perspective. I mean, we've obviously got the Western perspective, but it's really good to hear another perspective. And I think with menopause, everyone's going to have their own journey. Some people might want to go the traditional route, others might be open to exploring more options. And I know for me, I didn't know all the different options when I first was experiencing this myself. And so I would have really appreciated having this information. So I was a little bit more armed with information, you know, heading into it for myself. So for those of you who aren't yet in that cycle or might be in the cycle, I think it's great that you've got that opportunity just to hear some different perspectives and to be able to consider for yourselves what might be right for you, because we are all different. And I love that about you, Melanie, that you respect that, you know, there's a role for each different thing. So so thank you for jumping on. We will record it, so if anyone would like the recording, we can certainly share that with you. We have got some questions that came through on the surveys, and thank you for popping those in. And if we get time at the end, we'll go through them. If not, what we'll do, so there is a Facebook group, a private Facebook group that I've got. If we don't get to those today, what we'll do is I'll get Melanie to jump in and just perhaps do a couple of lives, and she can address some of the questions. And you can also then explore some of the questions you might have already been answered in the Facebook group. So Melanie, would love to hear a little bit, first of all, just explain to us how the Chinese medicine perspective sees menopause in this sort of stage of life, because I love hearing how you explain that.
So yeah, we look at menopause as another transition in life. So from the time we're born to the time we leave the earth, we experience these cycles in 7-year time slots. And at each of these 7-year milestones, there's different transitions that we experience through life. So menopause is the transition around the 7 and 7 mark. So traditionally, in classical Chinese medicine, menopause happens around the age of 49. In modern times, it's around 51, so that's not too different. So it's not a pathology. It's not something to be feared and something to stress about. The symptoms that Western and modern women experience around menopause are signs that there's imbalance in the body. So in Chinese medicine, we call menopause the second spring, because spring is a time of growth. It's a time of new beginnings. And so as we leave our reproductive years and move through menopause, our focus changes, and it really is a time for women to become more in tune with who they are, less focus off those kind of reproductive years, and more focus on self-cultivation and growth.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So you go on.
Oh, I was going to say, did you want me to explain? I can talk about this subject for years and years. So I can go into what's actually happening in the body at that time.
Yeah,
so the focus of our chat today was about adrenal energy and things that we can do to support that. In Chinese medicine, we look at the adrenals as coming from our kidney energy. So kidneys are the foundation of life. When we're conceived, we inherit Jing, which is our essence. It's like our battery pack that we carry through life. So our Jing supports all growth. It supports our bones, it supports our teeth, it supports our sexual reproductive organs and libido. And so we use Jing throughout our life, depending on how we live our life. So if we live a really extreme lifestyle, then we're going to use up our Jing faster. So this is important later on as we transition through menopause, because if we've lived a really hedonistic lifestyle in our early years, then it's going to make that transition more difficult. So kidney Jing is the essence, if we think of that as our adrenal energy. And then that's supported by kidney yin and yang energy. So if you can visualize the yin and yang symbol in your minds, with the white being the yang. It's our fire, it's our movement, it's all the doing and holding, all the action that we have in life. It's daytime. And then if we transition day into night, we move from yang into yin. And so our yin substances are all our nourishing substances, all our body fluids, our blood, all the things that kind of nurture us, feed us, and keep us in check. So those two substances, yin and yang, are in constant flux. Even though they're opposite, they are one and the same. We need both substances to be in harmony for there to be balance in the body. So as we are aging, our yin is naturally declining, and hormonally, as we're going through menopause, so during perimenopause, we start to see the decline of progesterone, our yang, kidney yang energy, and our estrogen, kidney yin energy, in varying quantities. That's why people will experience different symptoms as they transition through that period. And it's really important to understand that those things can be supported with diet and lifestyle, and definitely herbs. So it can really make that transition much smoother than we're led to believe in Western culture and Western medicine.
Yeah, well, as I was saying just before everyone jumped on, that's what helped me. It was the herbs, which was awesome, but it's amazing how many of the lifestyle factors actually make a really big difference. I know for me, for example, I could straight away know if I had coffee, alcohol, or chocolate within 10, 15 minutes, I would be having a hot flush. Like I knew, like I started to see the pattern, and it's amazing how you can then choose, am I going to do that or am I going to not do that? Because you know that that's what the consequence is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, do you want to maybe explain, like, from your perspective, why that happens, like that, all that heat, you know, the hot flushes and all that kind of thing that we experience in perimenopause, menopause?
Yeah, so there's different pathologies for that in different women. So like in traditional Chinese medicine, when you learn it at school, they say that because your yin is declining, your like nourishing, cooling, moistening, anchoring substances are declining, that there's like a rush of the fire. But it can get a little bit more complex than that. So that's one reason that you can experience hot flushes during that time. There's a natural decline in yin, and that's supposed to happen throughout life and throughout menopause. But we should be able to keep that in check with the things, like you said, avoiding like foods that are going to cause heat and add heat to the body. So yeah, we can get really complex into why there are other patterns and other pathologies. And I think it's important to remember that Chinese medicine is not a one-size-fits-all medicine, and everyone will have a different pattern. We could both be experiencing hot flushes. I'm experiencing one now, but that's from talking. And what is the action behind it, or the imbalance behind it that's causing it, could be completely different. So we may have to have a different like treatment protocol, different dietary advice. I think when we're talking about any health condition in Chinese medicine, that there's no one-size-fits-all approach, and we need to kind of stop thinking that 1 + 1 = 2. The paradigm is, it's a big shift. It's quite different to Western med to get your head around that. There are different, and
everyone's bodies are different, but also our lifestyles are so different as well. When we've got children or not, the age of our children, the work that we do, you know, how much sleep we get, how much stress we're under, how much exercise we do. Like, there's a lot of factors, I think, that need to be taken into consideration, as you say, because whether it's Western medicine or Chinese medicine, there's no kind of one size fits all these days, because our lifestyles are so different.
Yeah, exactly. And just going back to the kidney jing that I touched on earlier, our essence, everyone has different constitutions, different amounts of jing. So it also depends on like the health of your parents at the time of conception, and what was happening there. Like if there was illness, if there was like substance abuse issues, if they'd had like many children, like, and so the amount of gene that we're born with varies from person to person as well. So that's going to affect how we transition later in life as well.
That makes a lot of sense now, because I remember my Chinese doctor basically, she doesn't have the best English, but saying to me that what you were talking about, I never really understood what she was saying until right then. And because I have always done a lot of exercise, and she used to get right into me about how much exercise I was doing when I was trying to fall pregnant and also post. And basically what she was trying to say to me was, I'm using up all my energy. Like she said, we're only putting so much and you're using all yours up. So now I understand what you're saying makes a lot more sense. Melanie, can you just explain, because I know one of the questions that a lot of people have got, and for anyone who's interested, there is information in that Facebook group I mentioned on this if you want to read more later, but can you just explain, everyone gets confused about perimenopause and menopause and how do I know which one I'm in and so on. Can you just share any comments that you might want to share about that, and perhaps some suggestions on what people would look for from your perspective?
Well, I mean, it can be a tricky time to navigate, and people are experiencing menopause earlier and earlier. I think that when menopause does happen earlier, usually there's like another underlying pathology that's running like alongside that. So it's not just the natural transition. So it could be a highly stressful lifestyle, or, there are 101 different things that could affect the time that one transitions through that phase. The answer is there's no kind of definite signs and symptoms. I think that there is a lot being discussed now in the media about perimenopause. The only way to know for sure really is to have your hormones tested and to see where the levels are at, because there are so many different symptoms that can happen. I think women are now starting to see, mood changes and irregular periods, like knowing that your cycle is shortening or getting longer, or there's a change in the actual bleed itself, whether that's shorter. Some people will experience heavier bleeds. So again, it's going to be different from person to person. And especially as you transition like closer toward menopause and the cycles become like really irregular. So some women can go months without a period, and then all of a sudden, surprise, and they'll have another period. I mean, as the hormones are fluctuating and reducing and that cycle is ending, different people will get different symptoms or different signs that is happening. But yeah, a blood test would be the way to know for sure.
I think with the period one's the obvious one, or if people get the other more obvious symptoms, like, for example, the hot flushes. But I think that the mood and the change in mental health is another one as well, like forgetfulness is another thing. And like people often don't consider, but that was the thing for me. It was like, I actually thought something was mentally wrong with me, because I just became hypersensitive about things and would get heart palpitations. So my symptoms were actually not anything of any of those typical ones that you expect. And suddenly I'm waking up in the night in a hot sweat, or I'm having hot flushes. It was more changes to mood and mental health. So it's probably just really important for people, if you know that, if you know that now, like if I'd known now what I knew then, I would have gone, oh, maybe I'm starting to, head into perimenopause or whatever. So it's interesting what you say about, so stress, and this probably leads us nicely into what we're going to talk about today, but it's interesting how, that the biggest thing that you can do to support yourself through menopause is reduce stress. And the most hilarious thing is that at the time of our lives, when it happens to us, is usually the time of your life where you are most stressed. Like most of us are juggling a career, I know for me, I have two girls. They were both at different schools. They were doing elite level ballet and, competitive swimming. My schedule started at 5 a.m. and I'd often be picking the last one up at 9:10 at night. And it was insane. And now I go, that's probably why I went through it at 44, and my dad was dying. So it's like,
oh, wow.
So truly, I think that stress, like people just don't, people really underestimate, I think, the impact that stress has on our lives, because it's the number one thing that you can do to reduce, the impacts of menopause is reduce stress. And it's like, oh yeah, what shall I do? Give away my kids, quit my job.
Yeah.
But I think the key is, and this is why I'm, excited to hear from you today, is looking, okay, what can we do? Because at the end of the day, there's a really great saying by Deepak Chopra, whether we realize it or not, each of us are responsible for creating the body that we live in.
Yes. Yeah.
So when people like me back then going, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed. Well, that's me. Like, I have to take responsibility. Yes, there's some factors that I can't control. So it's going, okay, well, there's stuff that's outside my influence. Maybe you could argue that I could have influenced some of it. But it's what can I do in and around whatever's going on in my life. So it's really that thinking about what responsibility can I take to maybe set some boundaries or carve out some time that I can have for myself and so on. So would love to hear, because energy, I know for me as a health coach, when I say to people, what would you love to have? What would you love if you could improve anything about your health? What would it be? Most people say to me, I'd love more energy.
Yeah.
A lot of us are dragging ourselves around, struggling with tiredness, because we are overworked, overstretched. A lot of people are overwhelmed. And we're just dragging ourselves through life. And I know when you and I spoke, you said a lot of the clients you see come to you with adrenal fatigue. So really starting to see big physical impacts from that stress. So would love you to sort of share with us a bit more about that whole stress issue around menopause, and then your tips on supporting our adrenal energy.
Just one thing I'd like to touch on before I go through that, like as you were saying about having the heart palpitations and experiencing those symptoms of stress. One pathology that's quite common during this time, as I mentioned before about the yin declining, blood is a yin substance. Blood, if you think of it, is full of iron. Iron's a heavy metal. It keeps us anchored in our body. It keeps our spirit and our heart anchored in our body. And so often women are very depleted by the time they get to menopause because they live such hectic lives, because we've bled for so many years. Blood deficiency is a big pathology that we can work with, like diet and lifestyle related practices to really make sure that we are anchored in our bodies and we are transitioning smoothly through that process. So blood, diet is a big one, and there's so many herbs that can support blood as well. But I digress. So some of the things that we can do to support our adrenal energy or our kidney energy during this period, the first one is sleep. We know this, but we're not always good at getting to bed on time. So the Chinese medicine has a body clock that we follow. And according to these principles, there are different time slots throughout the day when is an optimal time for each organ. So 5 to 7 p.m. is kidney time. It's the time that we recommend eating dinner. So our kidneys are doing their best kind of filtration work during this period. Dinner should be light, and it should help us to transition through to sleep at around 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock in the evening. So trying to have great sleep hygiene and practices, rituals around getting to bed on time. As mentioned just before about the heart, at night, our spirit should reside in the heart. So if the heart is nice and calm, if it's full of blood like it should be, then our spirit feels safe to rest and give us a peaceful night's sleep. If we're having vivid dreams, if we're having restless sleep, if we're having nightmares, then that's a sign that there's an imbalance in the heart, that maybe there's not enough blood, that maybe there's something emotional that needs to be addressed so that we can have restful sleep, because nighttime is yin time. It's when we rest and repair. And during menopause, we see a lot of night sweating, and that can be a sign that your yin is deficient. So by replacing yin, by working on nourishing yin and calming the spirit, addressing the heart issues, we can definitely help sleep quality. There's so much we can do in that area. And there's like simple changes, as well as like a herbal remedy might be something that you would need to see a practitioner for. Do you have any questions? If anybody has any questions as I'm going along, please let me know, because I'll just keep rabbiting on.
That's great. And look, I know it's a really simple one, sleep, but I know for me, you know, nutrition and exercise was stuff I always prioritized, but I never really prioritized stress, sleep, and self-care. And it was only when 2 natural health practitioners said to me, if you keep going the way you're going, you're going to end up, you know, burnt out, or, you know, worse.
Yeah.
And it was only when it was kind of said to me point blank repeatedly that I thought, okay, I better do something about this. And that's when I did start to prioritize sleep. And it's such a simple thing, but it's amazing the difference that it really makes. I think sleep, we really underestimate the importance of sleep.
Definitely. And yeah, it is something that we hear a lot about, but I think knowing that, like, for thousands of years, according to Chinese medicine, we've had these time slots, like this cycle that we should be like using to transition into sleep, and to really respect and honor the process of what sleep does. And I think that's the thing with Chinese medicine. It's very based in cycle. It's very based in flow and ritual, and honoring all the different cycles that we experience, whether it's day to night, whether it's, you know, from menopause, from having your period to menopause. Everything is a cycle, and that is in line with the cycles of nature. So we're just trying to create more harmony and flow and balance within the body and within the world. So we often say in Chinese medicine that we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. So whatever's happening internally is also happening externally. You know, we're all
doing that through COVID. That would have been a really good example of how people were reflecting what was going on in that wider world, for sure. So other than sleep, what would be?
So food is a big one. Like food, according to Chinese medicine, we understand that, you know, there might be increased heat in the body because there's not enough yin, or the yin is declining. But this doesn't mean that we go and eat a lot of cold, raw foods. So if you're feeling like you need to cool down, we actually suggest bitter foods, because bitter foods will help eliminate heat from the body without ruining your digestion.
Okay.
In Chinese medicine, your digestive system is like a little furnace. So if you're putting a lot of cold raw foods, and this isn't just for menopause, this is for life. If you're putting a lot of cold raw foods into your system, it's taking more energy to be able to break those foods down and actually extract the nutrients from those foods. So if you are having a lot of like drinks with ice, cold water, salads straight from the fridge, these things are putting your fire out. And even though a salad might have a higher nutrient content than, say, a stir fry, because the stir fry is already started the breaking down the digestive process. Once that hits your digestive system in the body, we're able to extract the nutrients from that, and it actually creates more energy for the body to use.
So how did you balance that out, Melanie? So say, for example, if it's summer, you know, and you don't want to be eating hot foods, how can you balance out the with a salad, for example? Like, what could you add to warm other than warm something that's hot?
Mm-hmm. So summer is an interesting time because Chinese medicine practitioners get flooded with people with digestive issues because everyone's been eating raw foods, cold foods. So it's about balance. So if you are having, say, a salad, for instance, maybe keeping the ingredients out of the fridge for a period of time before you use them, adding a cooked element, whether that's like a roasted veggie or like some you know, grilled fish or protein, whatever, like,
yeah, great.
Your appetite.
Yeah.
So considering the dish as a whole, if you're having a lot of cold raw foods, or maybe you've had an ice cream, making sure that you have like a warming tea before or after to support the gut before you're actually putting those foods in so that you can balance the impact to the gut, so it's not like just like a punch in the face. Sorry, that's a terrible analogy, but I couldn't.
No, that's good. That's great.
And
feel free to ask questions, by the way. Sorry, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. Like, if any of you girls have got questions, just jump in.
Yeah, and you know, avoiding very warming foods, like avoiding chili, avoiding you know, all the usual suspects like alcohol, coffee, anything that's going to add too much heat to the system is also going to be a negative during menopause. The other one is garlic. Garlic is often like worshipped as a superfood and cure-all for most things, but in traditional Chinese medicine, garlic's actually quite toxic and it's very heating. So if you are experiencing hot flushes and those kind of menopausal symptoms, garlic is just going to add more heat to the system, so use sparingly or not at all.
Okay.
And I think it's about also understanding that these foods will have an impact on your symptoms. So if you're going out and celebrating somebody's birthday, for instance, and you want to have a glass of wine, like I love a glass of wine too, and I like for people to be able to have the lifestyle that they want. I think health is not just about doing all the right things. It's about having a healthy life and a full life and a happy life. So we have to have the fun things as well. But if you are experiencing heat symptoms in the body, understanding that glass of alcohol or couple of glasses of alcohol will exacerbate the symptoms. So what can I do to prepare the body before I have that? And what can I do after that indulgence to support the body to reduce the symptoms and not have an extended like issue with the
Wish I'd known that 10 years ago.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, I wish I'd known that 10 years ago. I would just know that I was going to have the alcohol. So I learned the hard way to dress layers so that you could just strip off, so that you knew that when you were going to have that hot flush, you weren't wearing a warm jumper that you couldn't get off. And I think you might have had a question.
Yeah, just on the iced water. I drink iced water year round because I love it icy cold. And when you're experiencing what I am at the moment, experiencing a lot of hot flushes, nighttime, not during the day, all at night. And I can't seem to get my I'm thirsty all the time, hence the reason why I'm always drinking the water. I feel that if I go to room temperature water, I'm just not going to drink it. So is there a way that I can still have the ice water, like where you were saying, like preparing yourself? Because I'm just wondering if that's why it's really bad at the moment, because I drink so much water because I am so thirsty. And then having that of a nighttime. So can I balance it out somehow?
Okay, no, iced water, no. We have to transition you off the ice water. And do you know, I have lots of people that I see who will say this to me. You can transition from the iced water. It takes time. I would suggest trying chrysanthemum tea, but drinking it as a warm room temperature drink. So making it up in a flask and having it room temperature, it's going to cool the heat and quench your thirst without harming your digestive system. The practitioner in me wants to ask you questions about your digestive system, but as this is going out to other people, I won't. But I wonder if there is some other digestive symptoms in your pattern that might be a result of the iced water that you haven't kind of been able to.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've never realised is during summer I have digestive issues, and during winter I was only saying, oh gosh, everything's so great, and it's because I'm eating the warming foods. So yeah, but okay, it's great.
Yeah,
thank you.
Awesome. So any other tips on the food side, Melanie?
The food side we could talk about all day. There are so many. I think the one thing that I would like to mention is the use or sorry, I'm getting all tongue-tied. The use of soy products in menopausal recipes, and soy is often, and there's lots of research to say that soy is great for menopausal women. Most of the research that is positive has been done in Asian countries. The soy products that we're getting in the West are generally heavily processed. And I mean, we try to avoid processed foods anyway, but yeah, often like non-GMO, often they're genetically modified and heavily processed. So yes, soy products have phytoestrogens, which mimic the body's estrogen receptors, and have been shown in some studies to help with menopausal symptoms. Unfortunately, that for us, unless you're getting these type of really pure soy products, they may not be as great for they're not as great for the body, and they can cause issues like other health issues, which, I mean, there is still a lot of research being done in this area. It's a bit of a grey area, so they're trying to find out the links to cancers and things. And so yeah, I don't think soy is as great as it's been made out to be in some kind of articles and things. So be careful around the use of soy products. I'm not saying eliminate it altogether, but just be really mindful about how much you're having. I know I saw somebody yesterday who'd been eating it every day, and she had all the classical symptoms of excess estrogen in the body. And, it was definitely the diet.
Yeah. Something else that you when we talked was you were saying when yin's deficient, to have foods that have got fluids in them so that your body absorbs the fluid, because we start to experience that dryness. So do you want to just share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so often when we're drinking water, it's just going through our system. It's not actually, a lot of it is not actually being absorbed into the system. So a way to have that happen so that we better hydrated is to consume foods that have been or that have a high water content. So soups, stews, like legumes and things that have been soaked in water. So that way you're able to increase the amount of water intake and hydration for the body, which again will nourish you.
And coconut water was another one that you thought was a good option.
I like coconut water. It's full of natural electrolytes. And I mean, again, you don't want to have too much coconut water because it is quite cooling, but I think it's great if you're feeling like excessively thirsty. Definitely better for you than iced water. Sorry.
That might be do you like coconut water, Anne?
I generally don't drink anything else other than water, but because I don't like anything that's not natural. But I will give it a try. I like the tea idea, the chrysanthemum tea. So I'll try that and see what that's like. And not drink the ice. And sorry, it's still got ice in it.
Enjoy. But yeah, I think the chrysanthemum tea is great. You can still drink it hot as a tea, but I think if you're somebody that's used to cold drinks, sipping it slowly throughout the day at room temperature, you'll notice a change.
Oh, that's good. That's a great tip. So sleep was number 1, food was number 2. What was the third tip?
Yin exercises. So exercise is great, and there's lots of research to support weight training during this time to help with bone density, but not overdoing it. So incorporating things like yin yoga that's going to allow the body time to release slowly. Fascial release is really great because the fascia holds so much tension. So if, you're living stressful, we're all living stressful lives, let's face it. We've just been through a global pandemic. It just allows the body time to release and expand. Yoga, meditation, mindfulness, things that are going to slow us down, bring us back into the present moment, calm the mind, bring us back into the felt sense rather than being in this hectic kind of headspace, creating stories around whatever's happening in our day to day. And those practices can be, you know, a breath exercise that takes 5 minutes. It can be, you know, an hour class. It's about finding practices that suit your lifestyle. It doesn't need to be an overcommitment. You don't need to think, oh, I'm going to set an hour aside every day for myself. Like, that's great if you can, but if you can only spare 5 minutes to start with, give yourself that 5 minutes and cherish that 5 minutes every day. And then you'll find over time, as you give yourself that space, that the time extends because you see the benefits of it.
Love that. I love that you're not saying you've got to go and do a big long yoga session, because I know for me that's just not something that I enjoy. So even just doing 5 minutes would be beneficial. So that's great. And that's the thing, is a lot of people are so busy that having to go and do, you know, something that's long and so on is a challenge. So finding, if you can find a little pocket of 5 minutes and noticing that will make a difference is awesome. I think that's the other thing too, is accepting that our exercise, I talk to a lot of women about this, accepting that, you know, our exercise will need to change over time, you know, and that whole thing where I know for me, like, not being able to run as long and as fast as I used to was a really big thing, and just having to go, and it was actually a knee injury that forced me to totally, and COVID, where the swimming pools got closed, where I had to actually change my exercise. And I think that's another thing too, is just going, you know what, it's going back to that kidney energy that you talked about, Jing, or whatever it is. You know, if we keep smashing ourselves through that menopause period, trying to, you know, do what we did when we were 20 and 30, we're just burning up more of that. So I think learning to be kinder to yourself and accepting that, yeah, maybe you can't exercise the same as you used to, and finding, you know, new ways, or ways that are a little bit more supportive is.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful segue into the next point, is like supporting emotional and mental health. And acceptance is a big part of that. Accepting that our bodies are transitioning, like our hormones are declining, we are changing. And that's not bad. I think we have been sold this kind of idea of what life should look like, what life should be. And the reality is that life doesn't have to look like anything. It's what you want it to be and how you want to create it, what makes you happy. Like, you're the main character, and you get to write the novel. So yeah, stress is going to affect adrenal energy. And so emotional health, mental health, like we touched on the isolation and feeling like that you can't speak about this topic with people. It has been taboo for a long time. Like, I'm not sure why. I think we're really lucky that we are in a time where this is something that we're really talking about and we're hearing a lot about. And there are groups like your online Facebook forum where women can share their stories, their knowledge, their personal journey. You don't have to kind of suffer in silence.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so part of the second spring and this mental health is about this new awakening. It's important at this time to find things that nourish your soul, that make you happy. Like we've touched on the fact that a lot of women will have had children and will have been focusing a lot of attention on other people. Like I see many women who come to this point and their kids are like leaving home and they're doing other things, and then they have this realization of, who am I? Like, I've spent so many years focusing attention on other people, and that can be confronting, but it doesn't have to be. It can be very exciting. And I love this because I'm like, it is an exciting time. And when we talk about it and share stories and share these vulnerable things that are happening, we can grow that excitement, I think.
Yeah, it's funny because I've always maintained something for myself. Like, I've always had a career, even though I've always managed it around my children. And I was excited when my youngest was finishing school. Thought, cool, you know, I can have all this extra time and I've got, you know, something I can throw myself into more. But I still did go through an adjustment. And in fact, actually, one day she came down and I was trying to see if she wanted to have a coffee, and she was like, nah, I don't want to have a coffee. And then I just said to her, can you come down for a sec? And I said, she said, oh, what do you, and she was in a funny mood. And I said, oh, what do you want? And she said, what do you want? And I said, oh, just feel like I need to talk to you. And we went and I just laid on the bed, and she came and flopped on the bed, and she said, Olivia and I think you're going through an adjustment phase. And I said, well, I probably am, but I was actually happy with the adjustment, but I still experienced some emotional adjustment, I suppose. So
of course.
And I thought, well, that's cool. At least I've got something. But I look at other women who maybe they have put everything into their children, and maybe then for them, they can feel really quite lost. And in fact, actually, there's a girl that started up a group called Connected Women, and it's for women over 50. And it's actually targeted for women where maybe they are feeling a bit lost, to actually connect with other women and do activities and things. And I just thought, what an awesome idea. So I think even if you know, if you're strong, you still will go through that adjustment. And I think that adjustment is going to be different depending on, again, what's going on in your life and so on.
Yeah, and I think it's also important here to acknowledge women who have not had children for whatever reason. Like, I don't have children, and that's by choice. But even knowing now that I'm in my 40s and that is probably not going to happen, there has been periods where it's been an adjustment. It's something to think about. You spend most of your life trying not to get pregnant, and then you like come to a point where that decision or option is taken away, and it's confronting.
Yeah, so it is an emotional time, isn't it? Regardless of, you know, where you're at and your own personal journey.
Yes, definitely. And my last tip is a little bit taboo, but I love talking about this because it shouldn't be taboo. And it's our sexual health and honoring our sensuality, our sexual empowerment, really. So throughout this time, there's a few things that can happen. Sexual nourishment practices were actually something that they did way back in ancient China, and some of the first sexual manuals were actually written by China. So this is something that has been around, and I think in Western countries we're very scared to talk about it. But there's a saying that we say in Chinese medicine, it's kind of use it or lose it. And as women, if we're not having kind of penetrative sex or using toys for masturbation and self-pleasure, vaginal atrophy can happen, causing like thinning of the vaginal canal, and that can cause pain during sex. Obviously, there's dryness and things associated with the decline in yin. So this is something that we need to get comfortable talking about. And you know, orgasm is very powerful. It's a very powerful tool to help flow in the body in all aspects and areas. So it's something that we need to start talking about comfortably, start getting comfortable with. And it doesn't just have to be about sex. It's about pleasure. It's about you feeling empowered and sensual and sexy as a woman at any age. I don't really subscribe to the fact that, you know, once you get to a certain age, you're not seen as a sexual, beautiful being. I think that, you know, this time is a really important time to honor our bodies, to honor the process that we're going through, and, you know, to discover a new level of self-love.
I'm glad you raised that, because it is the stuff that people don't talk about. You know, the dryness is a big one. And, you know, once again, I kind of wish that I'd had someone give me, my cousin eventually gave me a tip, and I was like, great, thank God. Like, I wish someone, I don't know why I didn't think of it myself, but again, it's probably just that awkwardness of, you know, going into the pharmacy or whatever. So it is stuff that we can say women going through a lot of pain, having to figure this stuff out themselves, or suffering in silence, thinking maybe there's something wrong with them, you know. So great that you raised that, because we are having real conversations.
Yes.
And it is a part of the real conversation.
Yeah.
Part of the changes in hormones means that your sex drive can reduce. So it's okay, well, how do we actually get through that? Because like you say, you know, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that could apply in a number of different ways, I guess.
Yeah. And look, I mean, libido is all to do with our kidney energy. So if the kidney energy is not supported, then you are going to feel, you know, less excited about intimacy.
Yeah.
And then if the body is also, yeah, experiencing dryness, experiencing pain, discomfort, then there's no fun in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you a little bit about natural therapies? Because funnily enough, like, you know, sometimes the universe sends you people at the right time. So you and I met after I had just been doing some posts in the group about natural therapies and Chinese herbs.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst, you know, I did my best research, I'd love your comments on what do you think are the best Chinese herbs to support? Because I mean, I just got my stuff from my doctor. I have got no clue what she was giving me, but
yeah.
what would sort of, I'd love your comments on that.
So with herbal medicine, as practitioners, we always formulate. We don't use single herbs, or very, very rarely do we use single herbs. So I think we have to be mindful that if we're doing research online, there are hundreds of great herbs to support women during this time. But again, going back to the different disharmonies in the body and what's actually the underlying cause of a pathology or a pattern, that's going to influence what herbs we use or what herbs would best suit you. So ginseng is an example that we hear about a lot. And ginseng is great if you're really deficient. It's good for energy. It's good for like low libido. It's a very yang herb. But if you're somebody who has a lot of yin deficiency and there's already heat in the body, adding something that's quite yang in nature may be too heating and actually cause more symptoms. So it's important to seek like professional advice with herbs. You can also, I think there's a lot of information online that will have, you know, how we can use herbs in cooking. So like herbs like dang gui, which is a really great blood tonic in Chinese medicine. That's used a lot in cooking. And by using it in cooking means that you're not going to get as or the possible side effects is not as intense because the herb's broken down, you're consuming it with something else. So what you're actually absorbing is going to be different to if you were boiling it up and having it as a herbal decoction. So yeah, when we formulate herbs, we formulate for a specific pattern, not for a symptom. So there's different formulas for hot flushes, for instance, depends what's causing them. And the formula may, if given the wrong formula, yeah, the symptoms may not improve. You may have nothing happen. Yeah, the formula needs to be designed individually.
That makes a lot of sense. Might even, if you're happy to get you to jump in and perhaps just even do a live on that specific topic in the group, if you'd be happy to do that. So just one last question, and then if anyone's got any other questions, would love to hear them. For anyone who might be watching this, who is, because I know there was a couple of people that replied and they are not in either stage yet, but they're interested to know, okay, what am I heading into? Supporting the body early on, you know, could be great for women in their 30s and so on. So, and you and I discussed this, like rather than waiting until you're in the throes of menopause, starting to think early about how to manage it. So what would be a couple of tips that you could share for someone who's not yet there on how they could actually support their body to sort of ease their way through it as best as possible? Anything you can suggest?
Well, I always encourage people that listening to their body is really important. Like we do spend a lot of our time like in our heads. And so life is really busy. We're running around. There's not enough time for rest. Really, like with these practices and tips that I've shared, they can be implemented at any age. They're not just for women experiencing perimenopause and menopausal symptoms. So anything that's going to keep us like in our bodies present, anything that's going to help improve our sleep quality, our diet, the earlier we start, the kinder on our jing. So, you know, if you can save your reserves of jing through till like later in life, you're going to have an easy transition. Like menopause actually shouldn't be filled with these symptoms. It's because of the way that we live our lives at such a hectic, fast pace. And we're all guilty of that. There's no like judgment around that. But, you know, we live in a way that isn't conducive to rest. It's busy, it's stressful. We're not taught to listen to our bodies. We're taught that if there's something wrong with our bodies, you go to a doctor and they give you a pill and then all is fixed. So it's about, understanding your body, understanding what it's telling you, and listening to that and following up.
So really what I'm hearing is sort of creating those good habits early. It's around creating good habits around sleep, around prioritizing self-care. Like that's a conversation I have with so many women about that importance of filling your own cup, like taking some time out to actually do that. And they feel guilty doing it. When I say to people, what do you think about self-care? They usually say guilty and expensive. But if you can kind of start those habits early, then you're obviously going to be much better set up when you get into that stage. Awesome.
Definitely.
So thank you. That was awesome. Just to get your different perspective and also those tips as well. Did Anne or Lisa, did either of you have any questions that you would like to ask? Lisa, if you can't ask them out loud, if you may be at work and listening in or something, I can have a look in the chat. If there's any questions?
I do have a question, if that's all right. Just in terms of your cycle. So I'm at that stage where I've got very irregular periods. You know, I can go without months and then all of a sudden I'll get 3 in a row. My question is how, because, you know, when I was sort of on a normal cycle, I could feel my energy levels. So I knew when to, you know, go into my deep rest and things like that, or when I had the energy to make use of it. But because I have no pattern now, no consistency, is there any way that I can kind of know which part I'm in, you know, whether I'm in the luteal phase or anything like that? Is there anything I can do to help try and harness the energy that I have got rather than using it up when I actually don't have it?
Well, like it is a bit of like, as once menopause happens and you are not having that cycle, your body is not going to be going through that hormonal experience each month and hormonal cycle each month. So just as our body is transitioning, we also have to transition our mindset. So you're not going to be having those fluctuations. Your energy should be more stable. Like once it actually stops, at the moment, your hormones are still like playing out their role. But once that stops, you're not going to have that hormonal cycle. So this is where we talk about the second spring. It's that energy of rebirth and growth that allows us to have a more consistent energy level. So rather than having peaks and troughs throughout the cycle, it's more of a consistent thing. So I think understanding that is going to happen, and that's part of the transition as well, the mindset, that there's not going to be that like fluctuation or not as like significant, and that there may be other underlying causes. If you're feeling tired, like how well did you sleep? Was your mind busy? You know, there's so many other factors that may influence how we feel throughout the month, because you're not going to have these like defined periods of time like you do now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm just wondering whether, I guess my question is, am I still experiencing, even though I'm not in menopause and I'm in perimenopause, am I still experiencing those cycles? Or whilst I'm not having a period at all for months on end, does it mean I'm not having that cycle of the hormones going up and down? Because if I'm not, fair enough, but if I am, I'm trying to figure out where I am in the cycle.
Good question, actually. Yeah, I had never thought about it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, hormonally, if you're not ovulating, then your hormones are likely that they're not doing what they would normally do. So yeah, that goes back to what I'm saying. So if your hormones are not, if you're not having that change of estrogen and progesterone, because those substances are declining, then you're not having that same energy change. And so, yeah, if you're not ovulating, if the hormones aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, then you're kind of transitioning in through to that kind of more even energy period.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
I mean, you could track your like body temperature to see if you are like still ovulating. So like you would do if you were doing a fertility journey, and chart your daily body temperature, waking up, see if you are experiencing ovulation. That could be something that you could keep track of to see whether or not that's still happening.
Yeah, okay.
I guess it's such a good idea, honestly. Tracking, like you say, your sleep, your energy levels, temperature, you know, those, and they allow us to then see patterns. So it's a really good idea, actually. Melanie, there was just a question about hair loss. I could actually answer that question, but you from your perspective, and then if I've got anything to add, I will. So the question was, did you discuss natural supplements and treatments for hair loss?
So again, supplements are going to depend on the individual case. Generally, we say that liver blood nourishes the hair, and like often because we're losing blood, we're losing yin. There is a lot of hair loss during this time. Something that you can do without seeing a health practitioner would be massage your scalp. Use a comb, use your hands, massage it daily. You can use ginger, like to stimulate the scalp if you've got patches that are quite significant of hair loss. Like as a practitioner, we do acupuncture for hair loss because it's about boosting like blood in the system. And there is a kidney element to that as well. Your hair naturally will thin as you get older, but it depends on how much you're losing. There are lots of things that you can do naturally. If you're worried, I would consult a Chinese medicine practitioner near you, or I'm available online or in person, depending on where you are. But a lot of women are experiencing hair loss after COVID as well. Hair loss has been huge since COVID, and I think it's the stress element of what we've just been through, like it's trauma. And one thing I didn't mention actually, like to do with the kidneys, is fear is a huge element of kidney energy. And so living in fear, like we've just gone through this big period of being locked down and what have you, the kidneys have been taxed. And I think that's why we're seeing so much adrenal fatigue right now, because there's so much fear around, fear of COVID, fear of people, fear of all the things. So we are seeing a lot of hair loss. If you have specific patches of hair loss, I would definitely treat at home with massage, with stimulation regularly. It needs to be like a daily thing that you do, even if it's just like for a few minutes. And if it's something, more serious, then I would consult a practitioner about it.
Awesome. Collagen is really good as well.
Yeah, I think collagen I have used in the past. It's good for like while you're using it, but then when you stop using it, it goes back to how it was, I find.
Yeah, good point. So you get to the root cause. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. What you're talking about with the COVID and that kind of stuff. Like people sometimes don't think about how big an impact that has had, and then how long that impact can continue on as well. Yeah,
I mean, we were all divided from each other for so long. Like there's so much fear around that. And I think so much fear around menopause, like in Western society, like we are sold this idea that it's a time where we're drying up and we're like, getting old and life is over. And it's like, that's not the case, guys. Let's create a new story around that.
And that's the beauty of the younger generations, is that they can create that new story. So
well, we're doing it now as well.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's why we're doing it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Melanie. Really appreciate that. I got some really good insights. As I said, it's stuff I wish I'd known 11 years ago, but And that's, I guess that's the thing, is being able to pay it forward and actually open up the conversation and help others. So really, really appreciate your time today. Can you just, what I'll do is I'll email everyone afterwards, and yeah, just perhaps if you can just let people know how they can get in touch with you, or how you might be able to help from here.
Okay, yeah, great.
So yeah, so you can actually contact Melanie.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry,
I thought you were saying that you would do that in the link.
I'll do it, but do you want to just let people know how they can get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I am based in Melbourne. So I see people in person in Melbourne, but I do also offer Zoom consults. You can contact me via my website. It's just my name, melaniemilne.com.au. And yeah, if you have any questions related to this, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. I love this subject, and I love that Chinese medicine has so much that it can offer. I don't always love talking on camera though, so.
We've done a great job. I know you were nervous, but you've done awesome. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm sure that there'll be others that will watch the recording. Really appreciate it. So thanks for jumping on today, Anne and Lisa. I hope you got some good tips. And as I said, that there is a Menopause Mastery closed Facebook group that I've got. I'll share the link when I send out the email a bit later on today. And if that's something you want to be a part of, jump on in. You can ask more questions. And then Melanie, if you'd be happy to do a couple more lives in there just to answer some specific things, that would be awesome.
Yeah, great.
Great. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your Friday, ladies. And thanks again for jumping on.